Left and right. Iowa State player after Iowa State player is committing to Penn State today. But also in the process, the defense takes a hit as they are losing Amare Campbell to the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And one of those many Iowa State players that Penn State picked up, two quarterbacks. Rocco Becht, the current starter, Alex Manske, presumably the future starter. Welcome into a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. As we got to react to a ton of portal movement here. Dozen Iowa State players have committed at this point. And a number of them are starters, are going to contribute next season for 2026. One of which is your current starter in Rocco Becht at quarterback, Alex Manske, your quarterback of the future, presumably. We also got to talk about Amare Campbell, but Amare Campbell's not the only Penn State player that made a decision today. Tyseer Denmark returns. So, right, you take the good, a lot of good for Penn State with the bad. I want to begin at quarterback, though. And of course, later on, we'll get to the live chat, of course. Promise that. Rocco Becht. All right. So the debate was, did Penn State make the correct move? They let Ethan Grunkemeyer go. Rocco Becht comes in. The answer, in short, is yes. Penn State did make the right decision. Matt Campbell did make the right decision because this was bigger than just Rocco Becht versus Ethan Grunkemeyer. I do believe that one, Rocco Becht, to each their own, is either slightly better or the same, okay? So Becht and Grunkemeyer are the same for this next season. They would have given you similar numbers, similar completion percentage, stats if you give Ethan Grunkemeyer a full season of starting. Also, the weapons that, what gives me belief in Rocco Becht is he is going to have a better offensive line. He's going to have a more comprehensive ground game. Right? Okay, so you have Carson Hansen that transfers over, but also now you add a player like Quentin Martin into the backfield. Okay, Penn State's trying to target Mekhi Frazier, Michigan State running back, who was their leading rusher from a season ago, right? So you're going to better the supporting cast around Rocco Becht that Ethan Grunkemeyer had. But the answer is not in the short term, it's in the long term. So this isn't about just Rocco Becht versus Ethan Grunkemeyer. I fully believe, this is a hunch, this isn't insider information, I think that Penn State wanted to keep Ethan Grunkemeyer around as the QB of the future. But if you're Grunk, why would you go and say and be quarterback number 2 or open yourself up to a quarterback competition? Same thing with Rocco Becht when you have a year of eligibility left. Grunk deserves to be a starter and thinks that he's a starter. And from Matt Campbell's evaluations and everything else, he believes that the better decision was bringing in both Rocco Becht and Alex Manske. So Rocco Becht is only one piece of this conversation. It's also about Alex Manske. Manske is your QB of the future now because Grunk probably was offered that opportunity, but decided, hey, it's in my best interest to go be a starter somewhere else. If that's at Virginia Tech, if that's at another Big Ten school, if that's in another Power 4 school, so be it. I think that Grunk has proven that he is a capable starter. So, since he didn't want to be QB2 again at Penn State and then be the starter of the future, which I do not blame him, he should be a starter somewhere. Alex Manske comes in as that QB of the future. If you're Penn State and you roll with Ethan Grunkemeyer, if you're Matt Campbell and you go with Grunk as your future starting quarterback, so you have that locked down for the next 3 years, who's your backup? Who's your backup for the next 2-3 seasons? It is much more difficult to recruit a QB2 than it is a QB1 because who's going to come in to say, well, I'm just going to compete for the backup job? That is what Matt Campbell's thought process is that it was more than just who's better right now, Grunk or Becht in 2026. Remember, Becht does have the upper hand. If you opened up a QB competition, I think it would be safe to say that Becht probably wins it, not necessarily on just talent alone, but familiarity with the offense. I mean, that's the advantage that he has. He's been in that system He's been that starter for the past 3 seasons. So Becht knows Matt Campbell's system. He knows how to run Taylor Mauser's offense. Ethan Grunkemeyer is talent, but he's also competing at a disadvantage, hypothetically. So that is what Penn State wanted to do here. They wanted to establish the QB depth chart rather than trying to chase down a legitimate and established QB2 for the next 2 to 3 years. You have to pay somebody just to be a backup. When NIL is as competitive as it is, I understand why Penn State is going in this direction. So as far as Rocco Becht, and I'll name some of the other Iowa State, we'll get to more of them in depth later on. But I want to talk about Alex Manske and Rocco Becht and what they're bringing to the quarterback room. So Rocco Becht, here's where I will criticize him. I think what's questionable about his game is his arm strength. I wouldn't say that his arm is necessarily a cannon. I would say where his upside lies in is that he's smart, he's cerebral, he's a veteran. Guy's tough. Okay, so he's a proven leader. So he kind of has all those underlying aspects that you want in a quarterback. Somebody that is an assassin, somebody that, again, proven leadership, proven toughness, maybe too tough, if we can say that, because Rocco Becht has that dual threat capability, and so did Grunkemeyer, but I want to see Becht actually dial it back at Penn State, because part of the reason, so he dealt with injuries this past season. I want Becht to be the starting quarterback for all 12 games plus for Penn State in 2026. You have to dial him back as a mobile quarterback. And that helps when you're able to build out the running back depth chart, because then you don't need to use Becht as an additional runner. You can rely on Carson Hansen. You can rely on Quentin Martin. And then hopefully you add somebody like Mekhi Frazier and you're able to keep around Tyke Hayes. So then the running back room has 3 or 4 legitimate options so that you don't always have to use Becht unless it's strategic. You don't want to just run him for this because you have to. It's what opens up the offense because you don't have another choice. No, you want to use that as kind of a last resort. So Becht, good decision maker, durability questions because he's dealt with injuries. He's going to have a better supporting cast. So I think Rocco Becht's only going to get better. If you assume that, well, he's just going to put up similar numbers to what he did at Iowa State, you now have an improved offensive line. You're going to be a fifth-year player in the same system, so consistency matters. You're going to have presumably a better defense to work around, right? So you play complementary football. So I expect Rocco Becht's stats to improve a little bit, right? They're not going to double. They're not going to triple because that's unrealistic. But to see maybe his completion percentage go from 60%, 61% to a 64 or 65. And that's pretty noticeable. Maybe dial back the interceptions because you don't have to force a football here and there, right? So that's what I'm kind of expecting for Rocco Becht. And you'll have an easier time throwing to the receivers and the tight ends that you're going to have. Okay, so you had Ben Brahmer before and Gabe Burkle before who were also transferring in, but now you also add Andrew Rapplier to the equation. So that's what I'm expecting for Rocco Becht. As far as Alex Manske, I mean, the jury's still out. I am not penciling him in as the guaranteed QB of the future, but that's why he was brought in, to solidify the depth chart and to give you upside for the future. The potential is that he is your starting quarterback for not 1, but 2, maybe even 3 seasons, depending on how this goes. I mean, On3 had him as one of the top quarterbacks in the class of 2025, it would have been. Yes, class of 2025. So he is going to be a redshirt freshman this year. This is what Penn State was going for. He is somebody that is a reliable QB2. I obviously wouldn't want him starting a ton of games or any games this season. I want Rocco Becht to be the guy, but he's a downfield passer. He is somewhat mobile, but I would say that he's more of a traditional pocket passer as opposed to Rocco Becht, who does use his legs a little more. So this is someone that has tons of arm talent, which is why he was so highly rated, because his ceiling is very high, but he's still unproven. How is he going to be as a second-year quarterback? So this is another developmental long-term plan situation here. Manske projects as the QB of the future. It's not a guarantee, but I think Penn State wants to be in a position where they have the guy of the future potentially in the building as opposed to going and chasing somebody down next season. And it also doesn't put the true freshman in an uncomfortable spot. Peyton Valzone, Casey Evans, I want them to stick around. I want them to develop. College football is the way that it is. But that is why Penn State and Matt Campbell made this decision. You don't want to go from Ethan Grunkemeyer to potentially a true freshman who hasn't played any college football. And those guys are truly developmental prospects, but they certainly have upside. I just don't want a depth chart like that where you got to go chase a QB2 or you're putting in a true freshman as your backup. That's not a stable plan. Rocco Becht and Alex Manske. That was the plan all along, and it's come to fruition. Let's talk about the subtractions now. As Amare Campbell says that he's being undervalued. Penn State is not valuing him, that he deserves better. Okay. What does it all mean for the Nittany Lions and their defense? We'll talk about that next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. A limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, that has become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and then make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect. It's right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to your Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Also want to give a shout out to the all-new Everydayer Club. If you want more inside access to this podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network, check out the links down in the description or visit lockedonnittanylions.supercast.com. And if you sign up for the Everydayer Club, you will get access to ad-free podcasts, plus an exclusive Discord server that talks all things Penn State, all things college football, all things Locked On Podcast Network. Again, links down in the description. Become a member of the Everydayer Club. Okay, Amare Campbell, and don't worry, I am going to get to the live chat as well. We'll talk overall because I'm sure everyone has thoughts about these additions. Okay, some people are saying that, oh, well, Penn State's just becoming Iowa State. No, they're not, because look at all the players that Penn State has retained in the process. But one player they did ultimately lose. It was interesting. It was intriguing that Campbell was taking as long as he did to make a decision, because that led to him actually jumping into the transfer portal because, as he said in his farewell message, I mean, this is Campbell's words, not mine, that he is being undervalued and he has to do what's best for him and his family. And I totally understand that. In this age where year after year after year, your situation could get better, your situation can get worse. Now, while I disagree with Amare Campbell, because I try to look at the bigger picture here as opposed to, well, I could go get more NIL dollars somewhere else. And maybe it's not that simple for Amare Campbell. Maybe it's not. But when I look at it and the way that you frame your farewell message, it leads me to believe that it is very NIL and agent driven, that there's a better offer waiting for you on the table. You can increase your payment for $250,000. Maybe it's $500,000. You can look at it both ways. Amare Campbell is going and getting his worth, and Penn State is not overspending for one player. Which decision's right at the end of the day? Okay, I don't blame Penn State for wanting to divest and have its resources available to go build out a roster, because they got to make a ton of other transfer portal moves. They still got to go get defensive linemen. Now you got to go get another linebacker. The loss is big. It's not ideal. This was the guy that held the linebacker room together when Tony Rojas went down. He was your leading tackler. He is one of the smartest football players on the field at any given time. I would say that Amare Campbell is one of the smartest football players in the locker room. The guy is a defensive coach. You watch, one of the favorite things, and I pointed this out all season long about Campbell, is I just liked watching him go to work. You would see him coordinate the defense. If anybody benefited from Jim Knowles' defense, it was actually Amare Campbell. So, hey, maybe he goes to Tennessee. Best of luck to him. Maybe he goes Back to somewhere, maybe I doubt he's going to go to North Carolina because that's where he transferred from. But I'm trying to think, okay, he's from Virginia. Could he go to Virginia Tech? Could he go back to North Carolina? I imagine there are some schools that are looking for a star linebacker and are willing to overspend, right? But it's not ideal for Penn State. In a defense that is going to have a new look, it's getting a makeover. Danton Lynn's a new DC. You would like to have as many spots anchored down as possible. And your two starting linebackers in Amare Campbell and Tony Rojas were a must. So yes, this is a big loss. Penn State will definitely work to circumvent this, but it's not fun. It's not ideal. I do want to throw my 2 cents out there about this. This is just the nature of college sports as it is, where players feel the need to go and cash in and get their worth as soon as possible rather than kind of establishing a legacy. I said this on social media and I'm just trying to understand why some players are more interested in chasing a few extra $1,000 as opposed to establishing a legacy. Because I think of Amare Campbell or anybody else, guys that will play at a different school every single year of their collegiate career. You don't establish any sort of connection, brotherhood. You are the true definition of a free agent. You're the true definition of a mercenary. And I've never been in that spot, so I'm never going to fully be able to relate. But I think there's value in actually, especially in this day and age of college football, notice how the Penn State community rallies around everybody who returned for that second season. It's not like Amare Campbell wasn't going to get compensated. It's not like this was an all or nothing setup. And Campbell got better because of being at Penn State. Yes, he got better because of the player who he is, but also Penn State put him in a position to better succeed. I see the value in that. I see the value in a place, in an environment where you can succeed. You are rolling the dice that the next destination is not only going to pay you, but make you a better player. You know for a fact that Penn State was going to pay you. There was definitely a raise on the table. You can't tell me that Penn State wasn't offering Amare Campbell more money in NIL, but it wasn't to he and his agent's liking. And that's why we are where we are. I just think about that. Dollars aside, are you going to be able to succeed at your next spot? I mean, Amare Campbell probably believes so, but this is definitely a hit to the depth chart. Right now, Penn State, they're getting Iowa State players. We're going to talk about them more. And part of that are the linebackers that they're recruiting. So the depth will be there. The playmaking ability is the question mark, though. So you get Cale Brazina. You also get Caleb Bacon. Those are two players that are capable and I would say are quality depth linebackers at the Big Ten level. But I have questions about, okay, 3 down, are they 3 down linebackers? What kind of playmaking ability do they have? Can they defend in the pass? Are they more of just run stoppers, right? Can they stay with the tight end? Can they keep up with a line? Can they keep up with a running back that goes out into a passing play? And most of those boxes are questionable. Amare Campbell and Tony Rojas, you knew you were getting that in the dynamic superstar duo. I went on the record and said that, hey, this is arguably one of the best linebacker duos in the entire country because it was at the time. They were the glue that held the defense together. And notice how when one of them was missing, it was not the same. So you got to hope if you're Penn State that Tony Rojas recovers to full strength and that you go and get a linebacker that's outside of the Penn State, Iowa State nucleus. This is not how this is going to be resolved. You still have the opportunity to do it. But Amare Campbell, I just hope he succeeds. I hope he finds what he's looking for there. But certainly not ideal for Penn State. But hey, they retain another Nittany Lion player in Tyseer Denmark. That was the one that was questionable, right? Tyseer Denmark was seen. There was video footage of him walking off the field pretty early, going into the locker room. As soon as the game ended, the team was celebrating, and Denmark was headed into the tunnel. And now he's going to return. I still see the upside with Tyseer Denmark. I want Noah Polley to get the chance to work with Tyseer Denmark because Denmark has that natural ability. An offense and a system and a coaching staff that's able and willing to support him. I mean, Denmark can, if everything goes well, can still be a starter. And then you add somebody like Brett Eskilsson, you're going to get Chase Sowell out of the transfer portal, hopefully from Iowa State. There you go. So now you're starting to build a core that has talent, has upside, and then has your capable players that are coming in over from the Cyclones. But Tyseer Denmark adds to that. So my understanding or my guess was I thought he was as good as gone. I really didn't. I had a hard time believing that he was going to stay, kind of based on, kind of read the writing on the wall there. But he's going to stay. He's going to stay behind and work with the staff. And I think Noah Polley is the right wide receivers coach to elevate somebody like Tyseer Denmark and Kobe Howard. Kobe Howard already on social media seems pretty excited for Rocco Becht to take over at quarterback. Matt Campbell has done an incredible job. This is nothing short of impressive because they didn't just copy and paste Iowa State's roster. They retained most of the best players that Penn State still had while getting the best that Iowa State had to offer. And that was the blueprint all along. So we're going to get to the live chat, also talk about the dozen of players that have already transferred over from Iowa State. What are they going to contribute in 2026? That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like college football season, the tailgates, the back stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating. You had long queues, you had logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You can open up the Game Time app. You'll see upcoming college football games, upcoming sporting events. Choose your favorite team. You'll be surprised how fast it was to find great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. One of the best features, you get to see the view from your seat ahead of time. So you can select your tickets. If you've never been to a stadium or a venue, this is a really handy feature. You get to see your POV ahead of time, your point of view ahead of time, so you know exactly what you're getting. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets and sporting tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, so the players that Penn State has added to this point, and I'm sure I got to do a social media refresh to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Rocco Becht, Alex Manske, Benjamin Brahmer, Gabe Burkle, another tight end, wide receiver Brett Eskilsson, Carson Hansen, the starting running back, Marcus Neal, starting safety, Caleb Bacon, Will Tompkins, Kual, high upside offensive lineman who will be a rotational backup guy. He was a long-term developmental prospect, but one of the better offensive linemen in a recent recruiting class, according to 24/7. So, you're getting a starter in Rocco Becht. I'm going to try to summarize this all, and then we'll get to the live chat. But basically, a one-sentence synopsis about each player. You're getting your starting veteran quarterback, your leader, a captain in Rocco Becht for 2026. You're getting potentially the QB of the future in Alex Manske. You are getting a star tight end in Benjamin Brahmer to go along with Andrew Rapplier and potentially create the best dynamic duo in the Big Ten, maybe in all of college football at tight end. You might have the best trio, if I'm being honest, with Gabe Burkle, because Benjamin Brahmer and Gabe Burkle were both starting tight ends at Iowa State. The difference with Burkle, though, is he has more upside in terms of blocking. So this guy is your true inline tight end that is not afraid to lay a block. Maybe they list him, maybe they use him at fullback, right? And they move him around. You're going to see a lot of 12 and 13 personnel in 2026. That's all I have to say. Brett Eskilsson was Iowa State's leading wide receiver. So you bring him in. He'll play a complementary role. He's not going to be wide receiver one. I'm projecting that at the moment for Kobe Howard, unless they get somebody else in the portal otherwise. Carson Hansen, this is your co-starter at running back. Depending on what happens with Mekhi Frazier, I would like Penn State to make that addition because that's just a talented running back and somebody with Big Ten experience from Michigan State. As of right now, Carson Hansen and Quentin Martin are your 1-2 punch. You have your athletic home run ability. Quentin Martin isn't necessarily a speedster, but he's your all-purpose running back. He can catch, he can run, he can block. He's faster than Carson Hansen. And then Hansen's your bruising running back. But Martin can also lower the shoulder, right? Like I said, all-purpose. But your long yardage would definitely be Quentin Martin. Your big play upside, Quentin Martin. Your short yardage power back, that's Carson Hansen. Guy had 13 touchdowns in 2024 on the ground and then almost had 1,000 yards this past season. So he's going to be a co-starter, whether that's with Mekhi Frazier. You honestly are probably going to see all three between Frazier, Martin, if Frazier were to commit, right? I don't want to over-presume, but he is taking a visit to Penn State. Just know that LSU is in the mix there as well. Marcus Neal. Maybe I should have let off with Marcus Neal because that is going to be one of the biggest commitments overall, whether it's a Penn State player retained, it's an Iowa State player that joins, or a player from another school that's neither of these universities. Marcus Neal is a safety that is your true, he is your vintage strong safety. He had 11 tackles for loss last season. He knows how to find the ball carrier. He knows how to find the football. He just has a knack for it. Neal is solid in coverage, but where he is better is reading the play, being able to run and find the lane and go make a stop. He's active in the backfield. So he's listed as a safety. I see him as a linebacker. He stands at 6'1". I think he's about 200, 210 pounds, but he's over 6 feet. He's good in coverage, but he's better as a run defender. He is the complete safety, but more of your vintage strong safety where the guy is he's going to be one of the most physical players on the defense at a given time. So don't just see, oh, he's going to play back off defense and zone coverage and all that stuff. No, he's going to be down in the box. They added Caleb Bacon, and Caleb Brazina at linebacker. Will Tompkins, a high upside offensive lineman. Same thing with Kowal at offensive line. So that's what's happened so far with the Iowa State transfers joining Penn State. Okay, now let's get to the live chat. So I'm sure I got to catch up here. Yes, we are Penn State. It's getting really good. We're so back. We are so back. Brahmer, Burkle, and Rapp. Best tight end room in the land. Can we get Soel? You would like to. So Soel is going to be, and his brother, his younger brother is in the class of 29, was a commit to Iowa State. I imagine him being offered by Penn State. That's kind of the indication that, okay, the Soel brothers are going to join Penn State. We did get Eskelson, but Soel would help. Soel would help a ton. I mean, that's a player that you want to add. Still, I am looking for somebody to emerge as a star player. I'm hoping that Kobe Howard can take that next step. Remember, he is a year 2 wide receiver. So for him to go as a role player to somebody that's what is one of these guys going to be all conference? I would hope. But right now I see a lot of solid contributors as opposed to somebody that's going to stand out above the rest. So if you're Penn State, you are really banking on the fact if you don't get somebody like that Howard or Denmark or Soel, because I think Eskelson's kind of maybe at his peak. He can get better, but I think Eskelson is what he is. I'm looking at upside, all conference ability, a guy that can be a game changer, somebody that can take over games. And maybe that's not what Penn State needs this season because, again, you have Andrew Rapplier is a game changer. He can take over a game. Benjamin Brahmer can take over a game. And Rocco Becht's going to have them. So it's kind of that diversity of targets between Rapp, Brahmer, Hansen, Martin, and then Kobe Howard, Eskelson, in theory, Soel. I think that's the idea, that you just have so many good weapons that it's a pick your poison type of scenario for Penn State's offense. And then you got to factor in, okay, Rocco Becht could keep the football at any point in time. So do you devote a quarterback spy there? But the depth chart is, above all else, being filled out, that this one player, if he gets hurt, it's not going to make or break, because that's what happened. That is what happened. Penn State had that at linebacker where Tony Rojas got hurt and the entire defense fell apart. You don't want to be in that situation. So that's why trying to get as many players over from Iowa State is important, because not only do you get some starting caliber players, some star players. You also build out your depth chart. And you need depth. College football playoff in 2026. So it depends. It depends, right? The resume is only going to hold up so much. 10-2 is certainly in the realm of possibility. Does that get you into the college football playoff? And the games, well, USC and Michigan. So let me pull up the schedule real quick because I want to make sure I have it right. I don't want to just guess. So they're going to beat Marshall. They're going to beat Temple. They're going to beat Buffalo. They would beat Maryland. Do they win at Michigan? Well, Michigan's going through its own coaching change. Where are they going to get a quarterback? Is Devin Dampier going to follow? Is the Utah roster just going to follow over to Michigan? In theory, I mean, that's what's happening for Penn State, right? With Iowa State. How many Michigan players are going to stay behind, though? Okay, that's key. It's still in Ann Arbor. Kyle Whittingham's a really good coach. Michigan has resources. They will be good. They will be competitive. But will they have everything anchored down? We'll see. Michigan's not as strong of a team as I was projecting initially when we had this conversation, well, months ago, when before James Franklin was fired, and we even got to this point. At Northwestern, win. Minnesota at home, win. Purdue at home, win. Rutgers at home, win. USC. Okay. That's one. It's like, I'm probably going to say that's a loss at this point in time. But USC does have to come over to Beaver Stadium. What if that game happens to be in late November? That's all I'm going to say. Wisconsin at home. That's a win. And then at Washington. Washington is going to be a sneaky contender for the Big Ten. They're retaining star quarterback and Damon Williams. That is going to be a team to watch if they can continue to put it together and fill out the starting cast because they are supporting cast. They are losing their best wide receiver and their best running back. I'm sure the offensive line is turning over from the last time I checked. So if Washington is able to replenish those spots, you build around the star QB, that's a team, and then go flying out to Seattle, Washington. That's not ideal, right? You would rather have that game later on in the season as opposed to earlier in the season. So that schedule, what games would you circle and say this is a guaranteed loss? Technically, none of them. I don't have any of these penciled in as a guarantee. Like Penn State has no chance. They have a chance in all of them, and I would favor them right now on paper against 8 of these teams. Washington, USC, and Michigan are the dicey ones. Do I want to throw one out there? But that's purely a guess. Maryland, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. The 3 that I'm most concerned about are Michigan, USC, and Washington. 9-3. Is that unreasonable? No. This is not a 6-6 team. This is 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. And depending on and that's still a guess as how will Michigan look? How will Washington look? I'm assuming that they will be better. The only one that I'm certain of for the most part is USC. They need to strengthen defensive line and linebacker. Absolutely. Give us some good defensive tackle news. Okay, you know what? You're right. With all the portal moves, I failed to mention that Penn State did retain Ty Blanding. Defensive tackles are defensive tackles. Okay, that's a big deal. DeAndre Cook and Liam Andrews coming back. Defensive tackles are a premium in the transfer portal. Those guys were all former 4-stars and player. Ty Blanding contributed a good amount. With a new defensive line coach, Ikaika Malloy maybe. What I really like about this staff, you have Danton Lynn, you have Ikaika Malloy, you get Chris Veek, you retain Dan Connor, but specifically with those 3 names, and not Dan Connor, they're all play callers or former play callers. Danton Lynn's going to be the DC and be the play caller, but your linebackers coach has play calling experience. Your defensive line coach has play calling experience, right? These guys are experienced. Coaching matters. So the people that don't respect Penn State or question Penn State and say that's an issue with, well, the roster is taking a hit or they don't have as much talent. At some point, coaching matters. Indiana doesn't have a 5-star the last time I checked. How are they doing? And they built through the transfer portal as well. They got their QB out of the transfer portal. But you are correct to say that Penn State does, in fact, need to strengthen its defensive line and its linebackers. But this team's on the defense, the secondary will be the mainstay. And it's good that all these defensive backs, they aren't just good at one thing. They have upside in both the pass defense and the run defense. That your cornerbacks aren't afraid to make a tackle, and they're sticky in coverage. You need that. Who cares about Amare Campbell? Well, I spent, 7 minutes talking about him? I would have liked Amare Campbell to stick around. I think Amare Campbell would have been him and Tony Rojas were one of the better linebacker duos in the Big Ten at a minimum. One of the better ones in the country, honestly, in my opinion. How's the defensive line look, though? Questionable. Looks very questionable at this point, because I can sit here and guess and say, these are the players that I would like Penn State to get. These are the players that I would like to target. But Iowa State was a 3-3-5 a season ago, and you will see a lot of odd man fronts. You will see 3-4, 3-3-5. Danton Lynn was brought in to have all these different schemes ready to go. 4-2-5, 4-3, 3-4, 3-3-5. It's going to be to confuse the offense, right? I think there's power in that. There is leverage in trying to utilize all the different defensive formations and schematics to confuse. And it's just changing personnel. Your defense doesn't overhaul. It just means a different player from a different position group. So instead of, if you have 3 defensive linemen, what you do is you bulk up and you have more defensive tackles to kind of eat up the blocks. And then you have 4 roaming linebackers to go and make a play. Because I know some people are going to hear me say that. And it's like, oh, this is Jim Knowles all over again. There's going to be too much to learn. No, you just change the personnel out. Jim Knowles' defense was complicated because too many players were trying to do too many different things. You basically had an option. You were worried about multiple different assignments. And that was the problem with Jim Knowles' defense, is it got too many people thinking. Too many players were thinking. Just because Danton Lynn's going to have all these different formations and different schematics, if your assignments are linear and they're the same, then it's going to be just fine. That's how I interpret it. Yes, Rocco Becht and Alex Manske is greater than just Grunk. That is what Matt Campbell has to be worried about a QB depth chart. You can't have Grunkemeyer and 2 true freshmen as the backups. You had to go get long-term stability. Alex Manske is just that. Welcome to Iowa State East. It's not that, though, because it's not like every single Penn State player went into the transfer portal. If that was the case, then all of those guys would have left and followed to Virginia Tech. There are double the amount of Penn State players that have stayed, to the players that have joined from Iowa State. So, yes, it's Iowa State East, but they're also joining the players that, and Penn State didn't just retain 10 or 11 players. They retained 25 plus, and good ones, I may add. A lot of starters. We want the guys that want to be at Penn State. Absolutely. I think there's value in that. You're playing for something greater than just an NIL paycheck. Okay, that is kind of where I default back to my point. Is that I look at it beyond, is this a place that you're going to succeed? Congrats, you're getting a check in the short term, but does this set you up for the NFL? Does this set you up for a future after football? Not everyone's going to be concerned about that, so I understand. Grunk is going to be really good. He did a great job under terrible circumstances. Penn State has let too many good QBs get out of the building. Levis, Pribula, Grunk. They're decent, but they also would have won their quarterback battles too, right? Except for Grunkemeyer, right? Grunkemeyer is the exception here, but Bo Pribula, it's to each their own. I don't know that Bo Pribula severely impressed me. Like, he was good at Missouri. He's transferring out after one season. Why is he transferring out of Missouri where he was supposed to be the starter next season? Or did Missouri push him out because they think that they have somebody better, that they can go get somebody better? Will Levis had all the physical tools, but never put it together. That's why he's going to be a journeyman backup in the NFL. Same with Sean Clifford. There's nothing that's different between the two. So Levis and Pribula never wowed me to a certain extent. They were good. They were never great. They never severely outperformed their counterparts in Drew Aller and in Sean Clifford. If anything, it's just a net neutral. You weren't going to get anything better with Will Levis as opposed to Sean Clifford. I don't know that you would have gotten much better than Bo Pribula. Maybe than Drew Aller, but that's an alternate timeline. We'll never know the answer. Rocco for Heisman in 2026. I'll take Rojas over Amare any day. It would have been nice to have both, right? Veteran linebackers. Amare is too small to be an elite linebacker. I tend to disagree because of the way that he was. He led Penn State in stats. He is going to be. He's not a. I don't think of him as a physical run stopping linebacker. I think he does a little bit of everything. He can be your QB spy. I'm not going to dwell on a player that is no longer at Penn State, but Campbell is certainly a good player, and I hope he settles into a defense that is able to utilize his skill set. He's the eyes and ears of a defensive coordinator. He can blitz. He can be a QB spy. He covers sideline to sideline. He's quick, but it's having that athleticism coupled with how he understands the game and understands it quickly. But it's not going to be a Penn State, right? Do we have a big wide receiver? Define big. Are we talking about big name, or are we talking about a tall, big-bodied wide receiver? Because the answer is neither. The answer is neither. I know that Penn State is trying to target. I think Brukins from Iowa State is interested in Penn State, or at least intends to visit. And maybe, again, I've kind of lost count of all the players that have transferred in from Iowa State to this point, or other players that are interested. But there is a 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver that Penn State is trying to get. And so Chase Sowell is 6'3". I guess that would count, right? He would be the guy that counts as that big wide receiver because he's tall. If that's what we're going with, as far as like a big playmaker, a game changer, I think you don't technically have that. You were banking on Kobe Howard, Sowell potentially. Even Tyseer Denmark. I mean, I think Tyseer Denmark, he was always talked about a player that was one of those up-and-coming future wide receivers. And he gets a restart that I think he definitely needs. The first home game will be insane. Absolutely. Michigan is the only loss. But then we fire back with, we will beat Michigan. I don't have a scouting report on Michigan. They don't have a quarterback as far as I'm concerned. Their staff is looking pretty good. Offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator hires were great. They were phenomenal. When do we play USC? To be determined. To be determined. Hopefully that's a November game, but that's probably going to be, if I had to guess, I think that is in late September or early October. And then Penn State will be able to do the whiteout and all that stuff. That's supposed to be the whiteout game. That's my prediction, is that Penn State would like, because how often does USC visit Beaver Stadium? Never. So you would like USC to be the whiteout game. And then so it's favorable to them so that it's not just, completely in the favor of Penn State. That game will be scheduled early October, late September, not late November, late September, because that's where you'd like it to be if it's Penn State. But for USC, they got to make it balanced, right? Yeah, so we are all on the same page that the schedule is extremely favorable. Trevor Burr transfers in. Just got Iowa State guard Trevor Burr, and that's what I mean. I do these live shows in real time. And then Penn State picks up another commitment. Yes, as of 15 minutes ago, Trevor Burr can be a starter. So we'll add him to the list. Trevor Burr can be a starting left or right guard. You have Anthony Donko, you have Cooper Cousins. Dom really impressed me at center. He definitely auditioned to be starting center of the future if everything continues to go well. The only position that I question is left tackle. Who's going to be your left tackle? Owen Alasini, Garrett Sexton? Most likely. Donko's your right tackle. Cousins is your right guard. Dom Rulli, potentially your starting center. Trevor Burr is your left guard. Left tackle to be determined. So that's not bad. That's not a bad setup. All right, I am over time, as I usually go over. So I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me in the live chat. And we'll talk more, of course. There's going to be plenty more commitments, plenty more names to talk about that. And we're going to see more additions for Penn State. Now, again, over 25, potentially 30 players are expected to transfer in to Penn State. So many more conversations to be had about what the Nittany Lions will look like in 2026. Again, my name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of this show. We do this daily here. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts if you are new to the show for more conversations around Penn State football, wrestling, all your favorite Penn State sports teams right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.